Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Finance Minister reacts to call for increase in income tax threshold. Quadruple shooting leaves 2 dead in St. James. And later in sports, 1 newcomer named in Reggae Girls Under-20 World Cup qualifying squad. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Masters and here are the details. A renewed push for the government to raise the income tax threshold from $1.5 million to over $2 million. This follows the call by President of the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, JCTU, Helene Davis White, who in March had called for the threshold to be raised to at least $2 million. Now, her reasoning was that the majority of public sector workers were now over the income tax threshold of $1.5 million, which was set in 2017, following the compensation review. Now, speaking at the Caribbean Policy Research Institute Capri on Wednesday night, its director, Dr. Damien King, said that the government has the ability to increase the threshold based on its robust fiscal policy.
Using part of the fiscal dividend from falling debt levels, from the fiscal responsibility that the country has exercised now for nearly 10 years, using part of that dividend to raise the income tax threshold to 2.2 million.
His second recommendation is for the tax threshold to be adjusted annually with inflation.
Is to get us out of the cycle of having, in real terms, in purchasing power terms, of having it fall for 7 years and then having a big adjustment and then falling again for 7 years, is thereafter to index the income tax threshold to the consumer price index, which is the measure of average prices of goods and services across the economy. So in real terms, it maintains a constant level. You know, I leave it to you to judge whether, on the basis of this budget, he's worth the money.
For his part, Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark says raising the tax threshold to $2.2 million would be a huge undertaking.
That's a big number. So, again, whatever we do has to be sustainable. So it's something that we will sort of look at and sort of be transparent about the cost implications and, how, those cost implications could be absorbed.
General Secretary of the People's National Party, Dr. Dayton Campbell, has sought to assure that delegates will choose the party's candidate to represent the Westmoreland Western constituency. He was reacting to yesterday's protest by supporters of Councillor for the Sheffield Division, Garfield James, who claimed that the party had selected Ian Hales as the PNP caretaker for the constituency. But Dr. Campbell says the PNP hierarchy has made no such decision. He says the delegates will be given a chance to choose their candidate on June 4.
We are saying to them that both candidates, based on our polls, are above the threshold in voter intention, and we are recommending that both of them go to the delegates for the delegates to decide on who is the candidate that they want. So the decision is actually for them to make. So I'm not understanding exactly what it is that they're protesting over for. It's for them to go and campaign to the delegates for the candidate of their choice so that that person can be victorious. Hales is a vice president of the party and we have not picked him as the candidate. He's subjected to the same process as every other applicant where he has to go to the delegates. So the very opposite of the accusation is true.
He says the delegates list has already been presented to the constituency. The St. James police are probing a quadruple shooting at Bogue Village in Montego Bay, St. James last night. 2 of the victims died. One of the men has been identified as 30-year-old Jermaine Miller and the other by his alias Talman. Now, reports are that about 9:45, a group of people was at a business establishment when 2 men armed with guns attacked. 4 men were hit. They were assisted to the hospital where 2 of the men were pronounced dead on arrival. The other men were admitted. 25 spent casings were retrieved from the scene. We will not tolerate it. The stern warning this afternoon from the St. Anne Police to vendors who have returned to the streets to ply their wares. The commanding officer for the parish made the announcement while addressing the latest meeting of the municipal corporation in the parish. Raquel Porter reports.
The old problem of vendors overtaking the streets of major towns in St. Anne is once again resurfacing, causing issues for pedestrians and the motoring public. The areas Brownstown, St. Anne's Bay, and Ocho Rios. The practice has been drawn to the ire of the police leadership in the parish, who are today issuing a stern warning to those vendors, especially those along Main Street, St. Anne's Bay.
I'm going to use the opportunity to warn especially the vendors along Main Street, St. Anne's Bay, to take off your wares. If not, they will find somewhere to put them for you. Remove the wares from the street. Same thing with the Ocho Rios and Brownstown. I have already issued those instructions to my operation operative and will be pushing hard to ensure that law and order is brought back into the three main townships and sustained.
And in a bid to curb the practice of vendors, Councillor for the Ocho Rios Division, Michael Belnavis, is calling for an increase in the number of municipal police officers.
Our municipal police are DCs, are DC trained and so on. Have them be more integral in the actual workings of the municipal activities within the townships. Municipal police can assist with market control, vending, traffic, things of that nature. And the fact is that if we can enforce that from the municipal perspective, that would allow the constabulary force more autonomy to do other things that are more criminal orientation.
In the meantime, Senior Superintendent Powell says the corporation should rethink its position in having motor vehicles parked along Main Street in St. Anne's Bay. He says the practice is putting pedestrians at risk. As for taxi operators who insist on not using the transportation centers,
we are telling them to use the transport center. The transport center is where they must stop. Of course, they can continue. We will do what is necessary to bring law and order and regulation to the township.
Raquel Porto, TVJ News.
And it's time for a break here on the Midday News, but stay with us, more stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. Human teachers are still relevant in Jamaica. That's the position of Education Minister Favour Williams as technology begins to erode some of the roles of teachers globally. More in this report.
Artificial intelligence is changing the face of education delivery across the world. ChatGPT is the most sought-after platform right now among students, including those seeking to produce better academic papers or locate additional research material. Jamaica's Education Minister Favour Williams says she has taken note of the technology, but explained human teachers will continue to have their place in local classrooms.
Let me declare, despite ChatGPT, teachers still matter. Teachers continue to be essential, even with the proliferation of artificial intelligence. While AI, as it's commonly known, can provide a wealth of information and support, it cannot replace the human connections that teachers provide.
She, however, encouraged educators to use this period of technological change to get innovative with their teaching styles in the classroom.
It calls on teachers to throw out the method of teaching that creates passive students and make a radical shift to a collaborative interaction between teachers, students, and the curriculum or the content.
The state, she adds, is prepared to give more support to teachers to mold students who are able to compete in the changing technological world. She says so far over 14,000 teachers have redeemed vouchers that allows them access to laptops. That program forms part of the government's efforts to bring more e-resources into schools.
Our implementing partner, e-learning, confirmed that as of May 15th, 9,298 high-quality laptops have been delivered to 173 high schools to replace aged computers in their computer labs.
The Education Minister was speaking Wednesday during her contribution to the sectoral debate in Parliament. Carrie Simpson for TVJ News.
And it's now time for the Business Minute.
The Bank of Jamaica intervened in the foreign currency market for 2 consecutive days this week. The central bank pumped $60 million into the market between Tuesday and Wednesday. 6 banks and 6 cambios were successful in their bids. Sagicor Bank Jamaica, Citibank Jamaica, Bank of Nova Scotia Jamaica, and JMMB Bank received the larger allocations. Wednesday's intervention was the 13th intervention since the start of the year, pumping a total of $380 million into the market. Further afield, Montana is set to become the first U.S. state to ban Chinese-owned media giant TikTok from personal devices. Governor Greg Gianforte signed the ban into law on Wednesday. It is due to take effect on January 1. The video sharing platform says the ban infringes on the First Amendment rights of the people of Montana. TikTok has come under scrutiny from authorities around the world over concerns that data could be passed to the Chinese government. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Hal Shane Burke.
Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, the New York Immigration Coalition, an umbrella policy and advocacy organization that represents over 200 immigrant and refugee rights groups throughout New York, urged Mayor Eric Adams to scrap reported plans to house Caribbean and other asylum seekers at the Rikers Island Correctional Facility in Queens, New York. Reports indicate that the mayor is seriously considering a plan to house newly arriving asylum seekers in a now shuttered Rikers Island jail. Officials say many of the asylum seekers come from Cuba, Haiti, and Venezuela. On the international scene, Colombian authorities are reporting that 3 children and a baby have been found alive more than 2 weeks after a plane crashed with them on board in the Colombian Amazon jungle. Their mother and the other adults were killed in the crash. More than 100 soldiers with sniffer dogs were deployed to search for the children. Colombia's President Gustavo Petro said the children were discovered after horrendous search efforts by the military. He described the feeling as a joy for the nation. And after a long drought, Italy received 6 months' worth of rain in only 36 hours. More than 20 rivers burst their banks, leaving 9 people dead and forcing 13,000 from their homes. Officials say several others are still missing and thousands have been evacuated. Some 280 landslides took place and more evacuations were ordered overnight. And those were the top regional and international stories.
Thanks, Carrie Ann. We head to a quick break. When we come back, Karen Madden will have your midday sports report.